It's 12/23/2024. Merry Christmas to all our fans, all the people that listen to us, everybody that rocks with us on the Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P and Big G, minus Sarah C tonight. She got some business she got to take care of. But our crew wishes everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Everybody listening to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. But I got to say Merry Christmas to my boy, Andy P, man. What's cracking, Andy, bro? What's going on over there?
We're both nice and geared up here in our cold weather gear. We are playing in the elements. It's cold everywhere. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be celebrating the holiday season with you and talking about some college football after the first ever round one playoff games. We're living in a whole new college football world, and it's going to be real fun to dive into some of these games. But of course, because college football calendar can't just be normal, even though there were all these football games happening, there's still a lot of things happening outside of the games that we need to dive into because it's gonna matter. It's gonna impact the offseason. It's gonna impact rosters from here on out. I just cannot believe how much this thing just doesn't stop slowing down ever.
Facts, bro. I mean, there's so much stuff. Andy, we've talked about this before on past shows, man, that it seems like there's wall-to-wall action, and it's never like a dull time concerning sports, and especially with college athletics, because the landscape, like you're saying, has just changed so much. And that's our first topic. Man, our first topic for the show is JUCO. JUCO. JUCO has now changed the landscape of college football. And based on the recent NCAA rulings for college athletics, now junior college players don't lose any eligibility. They can go and play 2 years basically at a semi-pro level and still retain their 4 years of eligibility, including getting NIL at that level. So, Andy, bro, how does this change the landscape of recruiting and everything else that goes on with NCAA football, bro?
Yeah, this is one of those rules that we knew was going to fall at some point just because of the inconsistencies around JUCOs in general. So historically, you go to a JUCO, you play your freshman and sophomore year, you lose your eligibility, you come in as basically with 2 years left. But the NCAA doesn't run the JUCO system at all. Like it's its own separate entity. It is handled entirely differently. And there are already programs, mostly Army, Navy, and Air Force, that have players with 4 years of eligibility who spent time at a JUCO-like system before playing on those programs. Now, obviously, the military academies have a very specific reason for that, and that's due to the nature of going to school at one of those places. But for years, this has always been like a living contradiction that no one before Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt, actively tried to handle in a legal manner. And so for those that didn't know, Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt, was a transfer from New Mexico State who had previously gone to JUCO, would, under old rules, have been out of eligibility after this season. He then submits a basically threatening to sue. I believe it started as a restraining order and then morphed into a lawsuit where he was essentially saying the NCAA is artificially restricting his ability to generate income off of his labor because now that players can get paid, there's rules around restricting people's abilities to get paid in this country. And so Pavia basically made the argument of you've got this system that has contradictory rules that are not working in my benefit. And he basically all but states, he's like, I'm never going to the NFL. This is my only chance to earn an income as being a college quarterback. And the NCAA, there hasn't been any official legal ruling on this. The NCAA just kind of threw its hands up and said, look, we don't want to fight this. We'll give you the extra year of eligibility, which then opens the door for everybody else to make this same argument because the NCAA is not going to fight you on this. So I like, on the one hand, this totally makes sense. Like, I don't, if you watch Last Chance U, you understand that JUCO programs are a hodgepodge of guys trying to get to that next level. with guys who have been held out of the NCAA level for one reason or another, whether it's academics, whether it's disciplinary. It has already been a bit of a proving ground minor leagues for the NCAA based off of, whatever situation landed you at a JUCO setting. So I do appreciate that JUCO guys are not going to be penalized with losing years of eligibility by going to a JUCO. But what this does create some issues with, and Big G, you'll remember this more than I remember this. This is reminding me a lot of the old school BYU teams that would have to go away for a couple of years and come back, and you have these massive O&D lines filled with 24, 23-year-olds going up against 21, 22-year-olds, and they're just bigger and they're just stronger. I'm not saying that all of a sudden, like, there's going to be this massive impact of offensive line and defensive linemen coming from JUCO and going to the NCAA, but it does allow, like, if you can mobilize a relationship with a local JUCO, this does provide yet another way to roster build for coaches that I think is interesting, that I think we're going to say a lot of things about now, but we're not going to know the impact of this for a couple of years, because right now, like we were kind of talking about, like guys that are in JUCO right now, they're not in the NCAA for one reason or the other, and most of it's academic or disciplinary, so there's not really a way to fast track that process anyways.
Andy, man, I don't disagree. And matter of fact, everything you hit was facts out of the park. Now, I'm just going to take this stance from a personal standpoint. I am a former junior college athlete. I attended Waldorf College in Forest City, Iowa, that played now is what's considered an NAIA small school. But back when I played college football, it was considered a junior college. They played against teams like Nyack and Ellsworth and Harper Junior College and Coffeyville, Kansas, and these great junior college farm systems, the College of DuPage out of Chicago. It had these great junior college farm systems that fed kids to the higher level of NCAA Division I football. The deal was, back then, there was this golden rule that was called Proposition 48. Proposition 48 rule stated, and I quote, a player is not eligible to play at that higher level unless they receive a minimum of a 2-point grade point average and or a 700 on the SAT and or 18 on the ACT. Well, there was a lot of guys that could not pass those tests. And for some of the kids that come from these inner city rural schools, we know, Andy, that the educational system is not equal. So they don't necessarily teach towards the test for the SAT and the ACT. That's why over the last several years, you've seen multiple schools get away from that as a qualifying aspect to put a kid to play higher level college sports. So let's fast forward and let's look at it now. Now, I believe most of the kids that go to the smaller junior college system is disciplinary that are the super athletes. So because they had some sketchy issues, some background stuff, some stuff that they needed to clean up. And so I'm thinking that this, and just in my opinion, that this is an opportunity for those young men to prove it to those bigger schools and not be penalized. Because if you go and you get bigger, stronger, faster, and like you said, and you hit it on the nail, having a free farm system that lead to the larger schools. If you're a school like Iowa, you circle the wagons around your junior college. If you're a school like Kansas and Kansas State, you circle the wagon around your junior college. If you're a school like Texas or Texas A&M, you circle the wagon. USC, UCLA, you circle the wagon, because this is the primary location of a lot of these junior college schools. So now you get a kid that works his behind off, gets his academics together, and can transfer immediately as soon as his 2 years of eligibility is up. And oh, by the way, like you said, Andy, for interior linemen, defensive and offensive, bigger, faster, stronger is the name of the game. And so now I don't have to necessarily recruit a freshman. I can bring a guy that's been playing for 2 years and ready to go directly into my system and put him in place to put myself in position to win. So saying all that, I just got a question, because this has been a question in the circle of people I've been talking to over the last couple of days. Does this eliminate some of those 2- and 3-star kids from having to get an opportunity to get to play at a big-time university right away, to where now you'll start seeing 2- and 3 stars go to NCAA Division I, AA, NCAA Division II, NCAA Division III, even possibly NAIA? Or now does junior college become the system that leads players to the next level concerning the big-time programs across the United States of America?
I mean, I think that there's an argument to be made that if you are let's you and I were just talking before the show, probably not the best example because Ohio and Pennsylvania have such a rich high school football pedigree. But if you're from an area that maybe doesn't have the best high school infrastructure and you're really not getting those looks, like you're getting maybe some MAC offers, you're getting some offers, in the Sun Belt at the lower end of the Sun Belt, probably does make sense. But if you're a 3-star kid, and Big G, you could speak to this better than I can. The biggest difference is the facility and the holistic support of a student athlete that is now just the standard at every single one of these schools that is affiliated with the major conference. So looking at Syracuse, that is primarily recruiting 2 and 3 stars up until Fran Brown showed up. Look, it does make sense for me to maybe go to a JUCO. Maybe I can get a better offer. But if I'm going to a JUCO, I'm going to a place where there's not going to be dedicated athletic training facilities, or the training facilities that are going to be there are going to be, pretty much like your Planet Fitness down the street. You're not going to have a special dietary plan being cooked up by an army of university employed chefs, making sure that you're eating what you need to eat on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to have that high-end recovery room if you do end up getting hurt and need to get back on the field as soon as possible. That is the biggest difference when you're looking at the top of the power, I guess now with the Pac-6 or the Pac-7 or whatever coming back. We've got 5 conferences that have fully fleshed out, staffed support systems that if you are an 18-year-old, you want to be a part of that because you will be taken care of better there than anywhere else in the country. Where I do think this hurts is that we know and we've seen some of these MAC schools, I'm gonna call out your area of the woods here. Akron is struggling financially, facility-wise. They are struggling to keep a program up and running. There's schools like that across the lower levels of the group of 5 that right now have been relying on these, 1, 2, maybe a 3-star guy to come in and come and help their program and play right away. Now, if you're one of these kids, why would I go to an Akron where I can go to some place that has very similar facilities and I can work for 2 years, get bigger, faster, stronger, and then go up to one of these bigger schools where I'll have my full 4 years of eligibility? To me, I think this is just another system in place where at the top level, we probably won't see too much change. But this is really going to impact that lower level of D1 college football where you're looking at your MACs, you're looking at your Mountain West teams, you're looking at your Conference USA and AAC schools at the lower end that have just continually struggled to spend what's necessary and have relied on the fact of saying, well, we're D1 and you have to come here in order to get noticed to go somewhere else. That's no longer the case with this JUCO rule and is really going to change up the way that they recruit players.
Absolutely. And Andy, you, like I said, man, great comments concerning the subject, because like you're saying, the bottom line is teams want to win. And with the expansion of the NCAA rosters now moving forward, and now you're going to have profit share, look for some of that money to trickle down from these larger schools to some of those junior college schools to get teams actually ready to play and prepare. There's been this thing with the IMG academies and the different schools, the Bishop Gormans across the country, where they basically are building a farm system similar to junior college, but with higher end facilities. The knock has always been for the JUCOs that they don't have the money to put in place in order to support the programs. Well, guess what? You're going to start seeing money go down to those junior colleges like you've never seen before, because they are also eligible for name, image, and likeness while they're at the junior college. So they can really sell themselves for the local community and say, put me on a banner, put me on a T-shirt, put me on a billboard. Let me hook up with the local mom and pops concerning getting people in there. If I'm the star of the JUCO, hey, I can learn right away that my name, image, and likeness means everything. And for a kid that's got a character issue, man, that's the best training in the world to get him ready for the next level of play. So, Andy, bro, I'm excited about the JUCO wave. I think that we're really going to see it change here moving forward. And, man, good luck to all of those kids that actually have it, and especially the ones that are at the junior college level right now that all of a sudden got 2 years of eligibility. Man, some of these big schools is licking their chops because there's kids down there that I'm telling you are big-time players. So congratulations, and I think the NC2A did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bro, but that helps shift us to our next topic. The transfer portal, bro. The transfer portal has been going nuts. We said last time on our show that we would flush this out a little bit concerning it because now the portal is opening up left and right. You got there was a guy, Devin Brown, the backup quarterback for Ohio State, played in the playoff game and is currently in the portal. So I found out that it's actually a team-to-team rule. There's no written rule that says that once you enter the portal, you're no longer on the team. It's just program to program that states that information. So now these guys are able to put it out there, put it on tape. And, man, we got some big-time winners and some big-time losers in the transfer portal. So, Andy, even before we get to the winners and the losers, your thoughts about how the portal is working right now concerning the current college football system?
Yeah, I think that the backup and, the guys who are playing in the playoff or playing in the bowl games and then, putting their name in the portal is definitely a hot topic right now. But at the end of the day, like we kind of talked about this last week with Sarah. Like for me, I think this all comes down to your program and your culture. Like you see a situation where, Penn State's obviously one of the higher profile situations here where Pagula could have played in the bowl game or the playoff game, but didn't roster. He ends up going to Mizzou and, Franklin was pretty supportive of him, but now people are asking the question, did Missouri tell him that he can't play in the bowl game? Like who's dictating these terms to these kids? I think at the end of the day, the biggest challenge that we have here is that this calendar is it's difficult to plan things around the college calendar when you're dealing with academics, because at the end of the day, kids are transferring at the end of the winter semester before the spring semester starts. And for most kids, that means that you got to be on campus, you got to be enrolled so that way you can participate in spring practice by January 6th, January 7th. Which means that no matter what, we're always going to have this overlap. There's always going to be this challenge here. And the late enrolling for football is going to need to be sorted out. Like, I don't exactly know if the plan is, let players have their intent and let you talk to players and maybe they don't get to campus until the summer or the spring. I don't know if there's a great way around this when you're dealing with the academic calendar in the way that you are. But what I will say is that I do appreciate the players that do put their name into the portal and end up playing for their team. Like, I think that to me, that's a high integrity player who's willing to say, look, this might not be the situation that I want to go into this next year, but I made a commitment for this year. I'm going to finish out my obligation this year. If I get hurt, that's just part of the game here. I appreciate seeing those players who actively take that risk and are saying, look, the commitment matters more to me than potentially protecting myself from the worst case scenario here.
Man, Andy, man, that is absolute facts, bro. And the killer part about that is, how we get out. You can put some stuff on wax where you actually get into a bowl game and you're a player that does something and you're like, wait a minute, now I might have been getting this portal offer from this school, but now this school is interested. So that brings me to my question, not just so much with the winners and the losers, but does this come down to how much bread a university has to pay a player as far as NIL? And the reason I ask that is because you're going to have guys that's going to enter the portal, commit to a school, nothing's in writing, have a big game, and then all of a sudden they're going to shift. And I think we might even see that here moving forward because not everybody's going to have an opportunity to jump to that next level. I mean, I'm not going pro if I'm not going to be higher than a third-round pick, especially with that NIL money that's out there. So do you think that this will even infringe even more where you're getting dual and quadruple and 5 commits here, and here, where tampering comes into play now for the NC2A to jump in and say, look, bro, no more of this, man?
I mean, you're going to have to. We got some a little bit of breaking news right here that is getting passed along in my in my Syracuse writers chat here. Darian Mensah, Tulane quarterback, was in the transfer portal. He is committed to Duke. He's going to be the Duke quarterback replacing Malik Murphy. Yeah. It has been reported by CBS. He has an $8 million NIL deal over the next 2 years.
Ooh, wow.
Duke has $8 million to hand out to their starting quarterback.
Mm.
If that's the kind of number that we're dealing with here, you're going to see tampering happen. You're going to see players and schools really try to leverage and have multiple conversations here. For example, it's been widely reported that Kyle McCord, who came to Syracuse, was getting $600,000, which, he was probably one of the most highly regarded quarterbacks in last year's transfer portal. We're talking about 1,000% more money going to not the number one quarterback in the class. This is an insane amount of money now that schools are going to start funneling in towards their rosters, which I'm not opposed to. But like you're kind of mentioning, Big G here, whenever you're talking about this kind of money, when you're talking about life-altering money, when you're talking about money for guys that might not be able to go to the next level, or if they do, it's going to be as a as a 6th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, or as an undrafted free agent with no guarantee of ever playing in the NFL. This is your best chance to make money because there's more teams, there's more opportunity for you to play, and all of these schools have some sort of resourcing here. And so if you're the NCAA, they have refused to step in on this. They're going to need to step in on this because tampering is going to happen. Players are going to be taken advantage of. We saw this happen last year with Florida, where the school was promising money that it did not have and caused the player to miss deadlines and miss enrollment deadlines. Because again, as we just talked about, this entire calendar is based around academics and when a player can enroll with their new school. So you're going to need to put guardrails on here. You're going to need to find a way to enforce those guardrails because this is life-changing money that is being handed out very willy-nilly with not a lot of oversight. And someone is going to get burned by this even worse than what we saw last year.
Facts, bro. Hey, so I got to ask the question. Who's the big winner and who's the big loser? Because I got some teams that have already been cooked concerning the portal, but I got some teams that are sitting back and there's players coming in and I'm like, wait a minute, you're still playing. You're in a playoff. You're in a bowl. So who, Andy, in your opinion, who's winning and who's losing concerning the transfer portal opening up prior to even bowl season, bro?
Yeah, I think the biggest loser has to be Washington State. They've lost their coach, they lost their quarterback, they lost 22 players on the roster overall. This is the second straight year that now Washington State has lost their starting quarterback, and their starting quarterback has been the number one name in the portal. It was Cam Ward last offseason, this offseason. It's John Mateer, who's going to Oklahoma. So again, back-to-back years that their quarterback is going to a big brand name a school with deep pockets. But it stinks if you're Washington State because you're going to be part of this revamped pack something, and you're just not going to have a team to compete in that first year. And we thought that they did a great job rebuilding the roster last year, and all that hard work is for nothing. So I think that they're obviously one of the biggest losers. I do think that one of the biggest winners here, and it's a guy who's had to kind of coach for his job here. LSU has done a really nice job in the portal here. They got the Florida State edge rusher, who was one of the top names in the portal. They got Nick Anderson, who is the wide receiver from Oklahoma. He's going to be going over to LSU. And those were kind of two areas of the team, both the edge rushing and the wide receiver game, that I thought LSU really underperformed on this year. You're going to have Garrett Nussmeier back for another season. You need to give him some weapons. And they added that wide receiver out of Kentucky as well. This is a team that's going to be reloaded in the best ways with high quality guys coming in. And they're still working on that secondary that was such a disaster from last year. So you want to fix a defense that struggled against the pass, going after the best edge rushers and the best corners, in the portal. That's a great way to do it. And I think that we're seeing Brian Kelly is basically trying to assemble an all or nothing team here because he knows he has to make the playoff next year. Otherwise, he's probably out of a job.
I agree, bro. Hey, listen, so I know that the University of Arkansas has had 24 transfer portal players lost. I know that Marshall's whole entire team hit the portal because they were upset at their coach being not reinstated and being the long-term coach for the program. But I'm going to tell you, man, who's getting killed right now in the portal is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama does have a top 5 recruiting class coming into this next season. That is facts. But the deal is they keep losing the freshmen that they got in last year that were 4 and 5 stars. I'm currently counting 16 portal players and 4 upperclassmen guys that were due to either start or got significant minutes in this year's Alabama's defense and starting offensive line. Listen, Kalen DeBoer, I called the wrong coach. He ain't Nick Saban. Let's just say that. He ain't Saban. And Saban, for years, was able to retain depth on that Alabama depth chart. The new coach can't do it. And so, guys, if they can't play, they're out of there. And, Andy, these guys are transferring to the LSUs, to the South Carolinas, to the Floridas, to the Indianas. They're going to different schools, and they're like, because we're going to have an opportunity to play in the playoff. And people have been saying all along that the 12-team playoff was built for Alabama to make it every year. Listen, I don't know, unless Alabama learns how to win in a portal, you can have the best recruiting class in the world. Guys will come and sit and play 1 year and be out of there. So I like the fact that the portal opens up early because now it doesn't allow teams to really, really just stockpile talent and just hold on to guys. And then some guys never get an opportunity to play. So I think that the portal is a win-win. And I'll say the biggest winner across the board is all the teams that allow themselves to grab players out of the portal from teams that have just stockpiled. And don't get me wrong, Ohio State has benefited from this. And they've lost from this. Aaron Nolan hit the portal. Gabe Powers hit the portal. However, we just got an offensive lineman from Minnesota. We're getting an offensive lineman from Northwestern. We signed a defensive end from Idaho that was the best defensive end at the 1AA level. So you win and lose. But if you get just robbed based on trying to stockpile talent, you're going to take L in this new era, bro. New in for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that's like a great, just again, we got some more breaking news here. Shout out to CBS, whose college football writers are just breaking news left and right here. Aaron Noland has confirmed that he is transferring to South Carolina. He'll be competing with Lenore Sellers for a starting position there.
Wow.
That is unexpected across the board.
Maybe Sellers is in the portal. Maybe, hey, that could be a red flag. Because listen, Lenore Sellers is that guy. He's him. So maybe Nolan is going there because Sellers is in the portal. Oh my God. So this is going to make college football wow. Because Lenore Sellers is a Heisman guy for next year. He's in the portal.
And it's wild because again, you thought that Nolan was going to be going somewhere where he could play. The other big news here that is coming out that just dropped within, since we started podcasting, Logan George, defensive end for Bowling Green, for Idaho State, one of those guys, what we were just talking about with the playoff in Division II. He is the top defensive end prospect of there, and he is committed to Ohio State. Plan is that he's going to move from the outside edge and become an interior defensive lineman with Ohio State's scheme. So he has 1 year of eligibility left. So I'm assuming that means he's going to be in the rotation for next season. So Ohio State adding the best 1AA player to their roster next season.
The rich getting richer, man. So, man, the portal, like I said, the portal's going to be off the hook. And you think it's getting started now. Wait till the spring. It's going to get even crazier. So, hey, listen. So, Andy, we got to take a quick commercial break. We got to pause for the cause. We got to pay some bills. If you're watching us live on YouTube, man, we appreciate all the people rocking with us right now on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to us wherever you get your audio podcasts, Google, Spotify, and or Apple, we'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P and Big G on Fans First Sports Network talking that college football playoff yak, man. Hey, I just checked with one of my sources, man, and it's a strong possibility that Lenora Sellers is going to be hitting the transfer portal. I'm going to get, hopefully I can get confirmation. This is one of the guys that I rock with out there in the podcast streets. He's got feet on the ground down there in South Carolina. So hopefully before we get off air, I can get confirmation that Lenore Sellers will be hitting the transfer portal. All right, Andy, we got to talk some mess about the games that just was played. I think recapping college football week 1, playoff 1, first time 12-team playoff would be a disservice versus us trying to just move on and let's press to the next thing. I think we need to recap and talk about it. So, Andy, what was your highs and or lows concerning the first round of the college football playoff? And I asked the question to the chat. Did they get it right? Did the right 12 teams play? So your thoughts on this, bro?
Yeah, I think one of the obvious takeaways here is that losing your conference championship game doesn't mean you're a bad team. Turns out that making the conference championship game means that you're probably a pretty good team to begin with. And I think that there was a lot, I definitely felt guilty to this, where I definitely think I underrated Penn State and Texas based off of those 1 games where they were playing, other really high quality teams. I think that we forgot how good Ohio State is because of how their season ended. These are just some of the best teams in the country. Like you and I and Sarah spent all season talking about how we had like 5 or 6 teams that we thought legitimately could win the title. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that I feel strong in that Texas is still a contender. Penn State, look, if they don't choke, they have a roster and they have a team that can obviously compete. I think Ohio State is still probably the second best team in the country behind Oregon, and I will stand on that, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about Ohio State. But the other thing for me that I see Tim in the chat here, and I'm going to give Tim his flowers. I think Notre Dame should be everybody's dark horse to win the title this year. They have the easier side of the bracket. They have the pathway to get there, especially now with the Carson. We'll talk about Georgia a little bit in the what to kind of look forward to coming up next. But with Georgia's recent injury situation, Notre Dame is a team that can just beat you ugly, and they can also score some points on you. And I was just really impressed in that Indiana game. I know the scoreline says 10 points. That game was over in the first quarter. And Notre Dame did a great job not to choke. They did a great job not to let the game ever get too far away from them. I was a big fan of Notre Dame in general, and I think that they should be everybody's kind of dark horse team here. Because at the end of the day, I think Riley Leonard's the second best quarterback left in the playoff. That's not necessarily a ringing endorsement of anybody, but it's like after Dylan Gabriel, what other quarterback do you trust right now? Riley Leonard just doesn't make the dumb mistakes. He can make a couple of plays with his legs when you need him to, but he doesn't make the dumb mistakes that we've seen Will Howard make consistently, that we've seen Drew Aller make consistently. We've seen Carson Beck make consistently. Same thing with Quinn Ewers. I just really think that Notre Dame is a high floor team, and their path allows them to not necessarily have to get into that next gear if they can take care of business and win battles in the trenches.
Yeah. I Andy, jumping ahead just a little bit, I think that Notre Dame Georgia game, the winner of that game probably will represent the bracket from the bottom. Yep. And, the issue is going to be is, like you said, quarterback play and consistency with coaching. Now, Georgia's got some coaches, but I think that Notre Dame has a really good young coach in Marcus Freeman. So I look for Notre Dame to give Georgia the fight of their life. And if Georgia's not ready and prepared, they might be getting smacked around a little bit in a phone booth because Notre Dame's not scared of them. That's no ifs, ands, buts about it. But, the first round, bro, I don't know if the playoff committee got it right, man. I mean, I understand that 9-3 teams, and the only team that made it 9-3 was Clemson because they sort of backed in because they won their conference championship. But the deal is, Andy, you're not playing weighted schedules, and it's like, okay, if if you look at Texas, and I'm not dogging Texas, I'm just being real. Who did they play in the SEC? And then you look at like Alabama and look at like South Carolina and look at like Ole Miss. Look who they played in the SEC. So is a 2-loss Texas team that lost twice to Georgia, who was the best team on their schedule, actually better than an Ole Miss team that took a bad loss? An Alabama team that took a bad loss? A South Carolina team that took a bad loss but's got some great wins? So that's my question about the SEC putting the right teams in, which goes to the committee. Did the committee really do what they were supposed to do by letting an SMU in? Clemson had no choice because they were a conference champion. But does Arizona State and even Boise deserve to be in this first round of the initial 12-team college football playoff?
Yeah, I think the answer is unequivocally yes, because all those teams that we're talking about that had 3 losses, they didn't just lose one bad game. They lost multiple bad games. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt and to an Oklahoma team that was there. They beat a Georgia team, and that's their best win. But those 3 losses that they have just really kind of, especially when you look at the way that those losses happened, where they were coming off of big wins, like the hardest thing about this sport is consistency. And Alabama, Ole Miss, what were our biggest issues about them all season? It was their consistency or lack thereof that they had all season long. What I will say is that if you are an ACC or an SEC, the way that you construct your schedules is really going to be interesting from here on out, because we saw after the SEC championship game, Kirby call out the SEC commissioner for weighting Georgia with more television games and more helmet opponents in order to boost SEC, television ratings. And he was not happy about that. Compared to a Texas who had a very different kind of SEC schedule. It would not surprise me. Like the ACC is a little bit different because they release their schedule like 10 years out in advance. It would not surprise me to see college teams start shifting to a more NFL model where they weight the schedule every year, where it's hey, we're going to make sure that that you are, if you finished as the conference champion, you're going to play 3 teams in the bottom tier, 3 teams in the middle tier, 3 teams in the top tier. Because we don't want this to keep happening now that we know that the committee cares about winning your games. And again, if you're a football coach here, like Kalen DeBoer, you've got to keep your team together. Do I think Alabama's better than SMU? Probably. Yeah. But SMU didn't lose to the bottom of the ACC. Alabama got boat raced by a bad Oklahoma team. They got beat by a Vandy team that was feisty and plucky, but only ends up winning 6 games this year. I don't know what to tell you any more than that. Like, look, Notre Dame lost a game early in the season to a team that they shouldn't have lost to. And you know what they did since that? They went out and curb stomped every single team on their schedule from that point out. Like, at some point, you are what you do week in and week out. And teams that are consistently winning games, even if they're not always playing the best teams, if you don't lose games, you should be rewarded for that. And I do think that when you look at a Boise that, took the best shot of every Mountain West team week in and week out, they had to play UNLV twice and they beat them both times, held their own against Oregon. I think Boise State's far more deserving than the Big 12 champion, which, as I talk about, win your games. No one in the Big 12 won their games. They all lost a lot of games, and that conference was just chaotic year to year. Big 12, I have a lot more issues with than, say, the Mountain West or the ACC.
Man, Andy, I don't disagree, bro. I'm with you as far as the right teams got in, but I think the shock value was what we saw in the first round of the playoffs. Because, to be quite honest, none of those games was close. Everybody lightweight got boat raced. Clemson was in it at the end because of some bad coaching by the Texas football team and them just in shell coverage from the middle of the third quarter all the way to the end of the game, which basically they was within one drive, and there's a turnover and there's a stop then again on downs at 4th and goal from the 2. So everybody else's games just wasn't even close, including the Ohio State-Tennessee matchup, which everybody was saying, except for us here on the Level Up College Football Podcast, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we went 4-0 as a team, picking the first round correctly. So we said that, hey, look, the home teams are going to win. The elements is going to win. Everything's going to be a factor. And just like how we said, bro, it was. You cannot go into a legitimate college football program and think you're going to come on the road and beat them. And that's legitimately what happened. Penn State, Drew Allar's quarterback, played the worst game he played all year. And they still boat raced him. You know, Quinn Ewers played the worst game he played all year. And they still dusted him off. Notre Dame, Leonard did not have a good game. They had an explosive running game, but he didn't have a good game. And they boat raced Indiana. So the deal is, and oh God, don't get me started with Ohio State. Ohio State was up so much that at the end of the first quarter, the Tennessee fans started leading the stands. They were like, it's too cold to sit out here and watch this embarrassment. Because the energy that's there in those stadiums, man, is just unreal. So I think moving forward, and Andy, we've talked about this on the show already, the 16-team playoff is going to fix this. But they have to do weighted schedules concerning the conference to make it fair to get the right teams in. And I think that's the only way to do it. And I'm just going to throw this idea out to you, bro. Interplay. SEC, like how they have in basketball. Every year you got the SEC Big Ten Challenge. You got the ACC Big Ten and the ACC SEC Challenge. Start having conference games across the board, and then maybe that forces a team like Notre Dame into a conference, which should happen. So that now you have equity across the board concerning teams being able to have maximum college football playoff play, bro.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of different things there. Like the Notre Dame, if I'm Notre Dame right now, not being in a conference might cost me a chance at the title because they got banged up against Indiana. Indiana got boat raced, but they definitely gave the best punch that they had. And the result is that Notre Dame's second best defensive lineman is probably missing the Georgia game. And that's not what you want. And you avoid that by getting a bye and winning a conference and going into a conference. So Notre Dame, just saying, join a conference. But the other part of this that I think is interesting too is like we're sitting here talking about, Clemson and SMU from the ACC got in with their losses. Indiana didn't play anybody this year. And when they played Michigan and when they played Ohio State, they struggled to win the ball or to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. And they only beat Michigan because Michigan doesn't have an offense. And they had one successful drive against an Ohio State team that played poorly against Indiana and still was able to beat them pretty handily here. Like, this isn't just a situation where the ACC and the Big 12 conference champions might be weaker. It's that if you don't have weighted schedules, you're going to get a team that's maybe mid of the SEC or the Big 10 that plays a soft schedule, be able to go undefeated and look stronger than they actually are and be a true paper tiger here. And I think that this, like, no disrespect from Indiana, like, I'm glad they got that game, but man, Notre Dame, like, Indiana was the number 3 team in the Big 10 and they got absolutely stomped by an independent. Like this, that's not what the SEC wants. It's not what the Big 10 wants. They want their best teams to look good in these games. And right now, the teams that we knew were good all season long were the ones that looked the best. Again, like average margin of victory in these games was 18 points. Average margin of victory in the college football playoff history up to this point was 18 points. The first round of the playoff is always bad because you're always getting these outmatched opponents. I think the 16-team playoff will help with some of these, but at the end of the day, like, this is an inherently unfair sport. And I think that the next round where we have the 8 best teams playing against each other, I think things will be a lot more even because this is a much more widely parried year. But I don't necessarily think that this is ever going away because the difference between a good team and a great team is pretty large in football, especially when you add in the home field advantage element of this.
Big facts, bro. Hey, we got some more breaking news. Literally, man, news is breaking left and right for college football. Georgia's Carson Beck undergoes season-ending elbow surgery, literally, as we are on air. The news was broke, and so Carson Beck will not be playing against Notre Dame Fighting Irish in round 2. He is officially out. His college football season is over. So now, does Georgia look like they're going to be vulnerable concerning Notre Dame? Because he's gone. He is eliminated, Andy. So we can dive into that just for a second and then go to our last subject, bro.
Yeah. I mean, Tim, you're active here in the chat, man. This is great news if you're Notre Dame. I know Beck wasn't playing in that was. So I know that they said that Beck was not going to play in the game, but we know how these coaches act. We know how these coaches do these things. Georgia has one way to win the national title, and it is by locking you into a phone booth and trying to beat the ever-loving snot out of you. The problem that Georgia has is that they are playing a Notre Dame team that wants to play that game. Notre Dame actively wants to play this game. If you get all the way to Oregon, Ohio State, who I think will be on the other side of this bracket, they are A-okay playing that style of game. This year, if you want to make teams uncomfortable, it's by throwing the ball. It's by trying to open the game up. It's by trying to win it in a shootout, not by playing this type of game. I think that if you're Georgia, you should be panicked and worried. I know Beck hasn't been amazing, but we don't know anything about this backup quarterback. We don't know what the situation is, how familiar with this offense he is. This offense hasn't looked explosive at all this year. This is great news if you're a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, man. I think that I think before this news broke, the game was already a pick'em. It would not surprise me to see Notre Dame be favored going into this game against Georgia, even though it'll effectively be a Georgia home game.
Oh, big facts, man. The line will move. And I'm telling you right now, we're not going to do the pick'em show this week because we got a little bit of time. But I'm telling you right now, I'm leaning in hard for Notre Dame because I think that without Beck, they stand no chance. So, but that's another conversation. Andy, we got one more thing I got to ask before we get to our last topic. What player impressed you the most in the first round of the playoffs? If you had to pick one guy, who impressed you the most?
I mean, we're gonna stick with the Notre Dame stuff here. I really liked the game from Jeremiah Love. I thought that is the kind. Again, we're talking about these games where being in a shootout is not what teams really want to do unless you're an Oregon who feels confident in your offense. I don't think Notre Dame is great with Riley Leonard throwing the ball 40 times a game. I don't think they want to do that, which puts more pressure on the running back. And Jeremiah Love looked really solid. He had that 98-yard explosive run. He had over 1,000 yards for the season. It was his 5th 100-yard game of the season. That's if you can get explosiveness out of your running back position, that is huge as you play these tough games. Like you look at the Alabama teams that won all those titles with Saban, it was like they had good quarterback play. They had amazing wide receivers, but every one of those games was always about the running backs, whether it was Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, or whoever they had, making big plays in the biggest games and turning a 3-yard run into a 15-yard run, into a 25-yard run that just completely flips the field. And I think that Notre Dame has that guy. There's only one other team in the field whose running backs I like as much, and hint, they are in Columbus, Ohio. So it's just one of those things where there's not very many teams that have that type of player. And so to see him do it in the biggest game, that is a great sign moving forward for the Fighting Irish.
Man, Andy, man, I think Love is that guy. I always get my sign out talking about he is him. I really do believe he is him. I think that he's a next level running back. He's definitely an NFL running back. So yeah, I got to say that. But there's a kid in Columbus, Ohio. Andy, I've been telling everybody all along for the whole season. Jeremiah Smith is Himothy. Listen. Todd McShay was on a podcast today. For all you guys that don't know, go out and search it and look it up. He said that if Jeremiah Smith was draft eligible, he would be the number 1 player picked in the draft. He would have Jeremiah Smith slotted number 1 on his big board. That is unbelievable. For a kid that just turned 18 years old, hey, man, he's a difference maker. And I think with that Oregon game, bro, Oregon is not getting a freshman anymore. They're getting a Himothy. And there's a lot of difference going on because I don't care if you're double teaming. You can't stop him. I promise you that he had a catch with Tennessee on the PI in the end zone to turn into an interception. All he had to do was get his foot down. Because in college, if you catch the ball and put your foot down, it's a touchdown. You don't have to hold it all the way through the catch. He had a one-handed touchdown while getting pass interfered. That kid's him, man. He's different. He's special. And man, I wouldn't be shocked, and maybe this I'm saying the big bias, if the national championship game was Notre Dame versus Tennessee. Because I think Cameron Hart versus Jeremiah Smith would be one for the ages, man. That defensive back for Notre Dame is a dog. And you get him matched up one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith, oh my God. All right, man, we got one last subject before we get out of here. We got to talk just a little bit about the hot game in round 2 of the playoffs. We're not going to do a preview. We're just going to talk about the hot game, the game that we're excited about the most in round 2 of the playoffs. Andy, bro, I'm going to go with you, bro. What game are you saying is just the game for the round 2 of the playoffs, man?
I am going to go a little bit off board here. I agree with everything that you. I think again, I'm going to let you talk about the game that I think you're going to talk about because you should. But I think that Boise State versus Penn State is going to be real interesting because we've been talking all season about, Penn State's inability to finish games when things are most on the line and James Franklin's continual choking here. But what they've done a great job of Penn State has been really consistent about beating the crap out of teams that are not as good as them, as we saw with SMU. Boise is an interesting team because, one, it's the Fiesta Bowl, where Boise's history is, if you're not a college football historian, Statue of Liberty play Boise in the Fiesta Bowl. It's an all-timer. They also
made the college football made the cover of college football playoff. Made the cover. Remember that?
They already said that they're wearing throwback uniforms. They're going to wear the same uniforms for they're going all in on this vibe, and they have Ashton Genty. And so it's going to be really interesting to me to see a game where it's really obvious look, Penn State wins if they stop Genty, they lose if they don't. And I think the reason I think this is so interesting is because I don't know if they can. Nobody can. The only team that stopped him was Oregon, and he still scored 2 touchdowns and had over 100 yards. And again, Oregon escaped by the skin of their teeth from that team. I think that it's going to be really interesting because I do think it's going to set a lot of the narrative about how do we handle buys, how do we handle non-Big Ten SEC champions moving forward. I think Boise has an opportunity to show that, good teams can come out of these smaller conferences. But for me, I love Ashton Genty. He's been a player I've wanted to watch all season long. I'm going to really enjoy watching him in this game. Even though I don't think it might be the best game, there's more chance that this game goes sideways than any other game here outside of Texas and Arizona State. But I think that this game has the potential to be real fun because it's going to be Ashton Genty versus the world.
Man, I'm digging it, man. You know what, Andy? I almost picked that game. I really did because for the same reasons. I thought that Genty, in my opinion, should have won the Heisman Trophy. He's just because he didn't break the rushing record doesn't mean he wasn't the best player. And Ashton Genty will be one of those first-round running backs that come along every once in a while. We had Jeremiah Gibbs a couple of years ago, and now NFL teams don't take running backs in the first round. Ashton Genty is a first-round NFL running back. But the game, man, that's got the intrigue is the Buckeyes versus Oregon, man. This rematch is going to be unbelievable. And I'm just telling you, I'm letting people know, you did not want to piss off the sleeping giant. They were asleep. They were dazed. They were rocked. That Michigan loss, man, almost broke this team up. But Andy, remember I told you, sometimes pressure busts pipes, but sometimes pressure makes diamonds. And I think they are closer together more than you've ever seen than a team. They are really on this Buckeyes against the world. We'll play any team, anywhere, anytime. It doesn't matter. And you're going to get our best shot. So now here comes the one team that really beat them. They beat themselves against Michigan, but they beat them. It was a 1-point win. And now we get the rematch on a neutral site that's grass, that's not turf, this makes you faster, doesn't play into the athletic play. You got to grind out there on the grass in Pasadena, California. And oh, by the way, it's the Rose Bowl. It's the traditional Pac-10 versus Big Ten matchup, Oregon versus Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Andy, I think that this matchup, it will be that all white people watch college football. not to be sound biased, but realistically, this is what people are going to pay to see. They're going to pay to watch this because this is comparable almost to an NFL caliber game. You're going to probably see, in my opinion, on the two deep on both of these rosters, you'll get at least 40 guys between the two deep on both of these rosters play at the next level. That's an NFL team, and good players, not guys that's going to get to the NFL and be soft or bums. I'm talking about high quality first round draft picks across the board. You got it on these two squads. So it's mano-a-mano, matchup. And man, I'm a Buckeye, but I'm excited to see. Andy, I'm just going to give a preference for next week's show. The game's going to get out of hand fast, and not the way you think. I think that the game's, and I'll leave that for all of our listeners, all of our viewers, and our watchers, the game's going to get out of hand fast because there's some stuff going on in Columbus, Ohio that I just don't think people understand and know. They don't understand how serious it is in Columbus, Ohio. So I like that. I think Georgia and Notre Dame's going to be a great game. I actually think that Texas and Arizona State's going to be a good game, right? I think that, in my opinion, Arizona State is a little bit better than Clemson. Arizona State can run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson couldn't run the ball. So Clay Kupnick is a good quarterback, but Arizona State's quarterback's not bad. So I think that's the sneaky game of the week is Arizona State versus Texas. But I think the matchup that I'm most excited about is Oregon and Ohio State, bro. So, Andy, we've come to the close of our show. This is the end of the Level Up College Football Podcast. Any final thoughts or last things? Or, Andy, where can they find you out there in podcast land, bro?
Yeah, you can always find me over Substack at AC Pregler. That's always going to be where I'm hiding out there. Be writing about college football and writing about all sorts of other stuff over there. And yeah, I'm just happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy those bowl games. Enjoy the NFL on Christmas Day for all you Yinzers out there like me who will be watching. As long as there's no buffering, we'll be enjoying some Netflix Christmas specials. So I'm looking forward to a great, relaxing holiday season with lots and lots of football.
Man, absolutely, man. Andy, I'm going to tell you right now, man, face to face, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, man. Enjoy your family, man. You work hard than most people in podcast land. You do a lot of great things, man. So happy holidays from my family to yours. Sarah, wherever you're out there in the atmosphere, happy holidays to you as well. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. And to everybody rocking with us, all the people that's watched us live all year long, all the people that watch us in syndication, and all the people that listen to us in syndication. We wish all you guys a Merry, Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and we'll be back next week for our preview of the big-time games on the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network. As for me, Big G, and Andy P, we'll holla at you. Peace.